Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 317 of the Stacey West podcast. I am your host, Ben, and I'm joined by Chris this week. How you doing, mate? You keeping well?
Hello. It's a long time no see, Mr. Ward.
Yeah, sorry, I've been busy. There've been lots of things happening that we're almost ready to talk about. Almost.
Woo, how exciting. But yes, I'm very well, thank you. Very, very well. Had a busy day today. Luckily, I've done my Wigan prep on my lunch break today. So thankfully, I'm not trying to wing this. It is all done as usual. But yeah, I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. How you doing? Other than you're busy as well.
Yeah, I'm good. Just very busy. I mean, the fact that there is currently no, as Gary would call it, childish artwork behind me might give people a clue as to what's going on. But yeah, it's all busy, very stressful, lots of things happening. Work's busy, life is busy. But yeah, we're good. We're surviving. We're doing all right. But I mean, of course, the most important thing that's going on at the moment is that you and Gary are currently fighting it out between you to get points in the fantasy EFL, and meanwhile, I'm gone. I can't even see you, lad. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. All right. Firstly, I think this is more embarrassing for Gary than it is for me because,
of course,
I was 2 weeks late. So that, as much as there's an asterisk next to my name for the whole season, it's an excuse for the whole season if I don't perform as well as I'd like to. And for those of you that maybe haven't seen but have got an interest in fantasy EFL, Gary and I do a half an hour-ish long show on YouTube every week where we talk through our teams, and we're having basically a battle between the two of us, and we have some guests on now and then. And we had a rule where if either of us got to the point where we were 3-0 up, so we'd won 3 weeks in a row, then for the next week, that person would have to have select players that had only been selected by fewer than 1% of the overall player base. So that was me last week. So I did lose last week to Gary and didn't score many points, but I was handicapped. So fingers crossed for a positive week this week. But it's really good fun. Thank you for those of you that are part of it. There's like nearly 90 odd people on there on the Stacey West EFL Fantasy League. By all means, please feel free to join it. It's good fun. It's a really good addition, and it's a lot better than the Premier League version, I have to say. Not just because we're all kind of anti-Premier League here at the Stacey West, but actually just the format of it is good. So you can actually select defenders that defend rather than just defenders that score. So that's
no, I'm enjoying it. That's good. It's good fun. Yeah, like I'd love to feed into it and say, I'm just picking the most popular players and all the rest of it to really hammer home that apparently I know nothing about football. But no, I am actually doing some research and it's paying off a little bit. So
indeed, the league table never lies.
Indeed. No. Well, I mean, I think I got the third most points in our league at the weekend. So was very happy with that. And of course, you were delighted when I sent a message.
I said a swear word.
I may have had a Wrexham player as my captain, and he may have scored after about 2 minutes on Monday. And I sent a screenshot to our group chat, and Chris just put, "I'm delighted for you." I was like, it's very rare that you can hear the tone of voice in a text message.
Yeah, but and you absolutely nailed it as well.
Yeah, but I thought, there we go. There's a slight amount of disdain in that one, but yeah, no, I mean today. So let's just looking ahead to the pod for tonight. We are of course going to be talking about Wigan. We're going to be talking about Wigan at the weekend at the Bank. I've done a preview which will be live, I think, shortly after we finish the podcast, mainly because I haven't scheduled it correctly. So that will be live later. But got a clip from that, and we're also talking about Man City because unfortunately we kind of have to. But in addition to that, we've got some talk about a little bit of fallout, I think, from the weekend's podcast. It's prompted a bit of discussion around seating in general, and I think there's a valid discussion to be had. So I mean, let's kick off with that now and save the preview to a bit later on. So obviously, you and Gaz had a good chat about on Sunday about the issues that were faced, shall we say, at Peterborough. Wasn't helped by the infrastructure at Peterborough. We know it's not the best stand. And I fully agree with what Gaz said in his article as well, that really there's only a couple of grounds that I've been to in the past 5-10 years where I think, oh, I don't necessarily feel the safest here. And one of those is London Road, and the other one was Hillsborough. And I know there's, probably a little bit of unconscious bias when it comes to Hillsborough. You've always got that in the back of your head, but it doesn't feel like a safe ground. But I think it just exacerbates a problem. And I know Gary put a poll up on Twitter. I'm still calling it that. I'm never calling it X, even though there's a fire. We put a poll up which said allocated seating is causing an interesting debate. If you go away and it's allocated seating, should you go anywhere or sit in your seat? The results of the poll were 61% sit in your seat and 38% or 38.8% go anywhere. And I think that's quite interesting. I think there's definitely a discussion to be had. I mean, I think one of the responses pretty much nailed it and sits with where we all are with it, I think. But I mean, your thoughts on it, just in that, with that as a discussion point.
Yeah, well, I was obviously witness to a little bit on Saturday. Nothing too much on myself and Joe, who I sat with. We were maybe 10 rows from the front or so we weren't subject to anything at the back. But obviously you saw that there was something happening, and you just don't like to see it. And I have to admit, I was pretty rare for me, but pretty animated on the podcast on Sunday, because I just don't see the need to be aggressive to your own supporters. And my mentality towards this is very much just treat people how you'd expect to be treated yourself, and have a little bit of respect for those people around you. And basically just don't be a dick is kind of how I try to approach this. But that's generally a nice way to approach life. But I do want to just clarify something on my stance here. That isn't me specifically criticizing people in the singing section or people wanting to stand and shout and be together. It works both ways. So don't buy a ticket if your ideal don't buy a ticket in the singing section if your ideal version of an away day is not to stand and sing and shout and jump around. That maybe be smart enough to realize that's expected there, and also it's unlikely you're going to sit in your allocated seat, because people will be standing, people will wanting to go together in the singing section. I think that most of us understand that's kind of the case, I think. But also it works the other way around. If you're not sat in a singing section, just be respectful of the fact that other people have got different ideas of what match day experience is like for them, and just don't be a dick about it, basically. And I think it was Nick. I don't want to quote this if it's wrong, but I think it was Nick Proctor that said on Twitter, pretty much nailed it, and said that it's kind of a bit of both, because the poll was a bit reductive, but I think that's kind of the idea. It depends on which section you sing, and the fact that the club put a singing section, an allocated singing section that's bookable, then I think that's probably worth just bearing in mind wherever you're sat.
Yeah, so I mean, I've got the tweet up here, and it is it's 50-50 view. Singing section, stand where you want to as everyone travels in groups, but you can't buy tickets together easily. Linking isn't feasible for size or groups of individuals. Anywhere else, you should sit in your paid for seat. And we're not here to stand, point fingers, criticize, or call people out or whatever, but I think that's the most sensible way of looking at the situation. The way that when I was listening to the pod on Sunday, the way that I thought about it was it's a bit like going to a gig. Like you go to a big arena show, for example, or a gig that is a venue that's got seating in it. You pay for a standing ticket. It's a free for all. You try and fight your way to the front if you want, or you end up in the pit or whatever. But if you buy a seated ticket, you go into that seat and that is your seat. If somebody tries to come up to that seat, somebody will come in and take you out of it. And I think for me, the singing section is the standing section at a gig, and the seating is, the other non-singing section bits. I mean, I've been to, I think there was some more nuanced bits in there where it was kind of, if you show up to the ground, it's at the point where you can maybe even pay on the day. Like if it's not sold out and you get there and somebody's in your seat, but 2 seats over, there's another couple of seats there. You show up with the person that you bought a ticket with. It's not too much. I personally wouldn't mind it if I got there and there weren't that many people in the stand. Oh, someone sat in my seat, but okay, I'll move over a couple. Like, it's inconsiderate, but you can understand that a little bit. But for a situation like Peterborough, obviously the away end is completely sold out. At that point, if somebody starts getting belligerent with you, it's like, well, you're in my seat. I'm not in the singing section. So, well, I'm sit where you want, mate. But it's not, is it? And I think you made the point on Sunday about they have a system in place to avoid this. Like, if you want to sit together, you can buy tickets together. 9 times out of 10, up to 4 or 5 tickets together.
Yeah. So of course, it's difficult to have if there's 20 of you all going, it's difficult to kind of get 20 of you all together, of course. But I think, you know what? I think the way you put it there in regards to comparing it to a gig is absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. I think I'm going to use that I'm going to steal that, if that's okay. I'm going to use that as my argument as well. I will credit you, of course. But
of course.
But yeah, I just think it's maybe it's a little bit of a mountain out of a molehill at the moment. I appreciate it's happened once or twice. Obviously, Sheffield United away last season was a prominent one, but it crops up every now and then. But it's not something. I don't think it's something that happens that regularly. Personally,
no.
It wasn't very nice. We wanted to make sure we referenced it on Sunday because it happened that weekend. But on the whole, I think we're a pretty decent fan base. I think we do look out for each other on the whole. But I think it's just worth clarifying our stance really as a podcast and saying, we're not anti-singing section, we're not anti, atmosphere, because that is absolutely something that's really special about this football club, is the atmosphere that we create, and a lot of that comes from the people that do want to have that as part of their match day experience. I think we just wanted to make sure that it's just that respect to those people around you it works both ways. So
100%.
Just don't be a dick and everyone's all right.
Yeah, it's the motto that I think I try and live life by in general, is just don't be a dick. Like, but I think that probably puts a lid on that one. It was a good discussion to have, and I think it's stemmed a little bit of it's fueled a little bit of debate, I think, since Sunday. So, but honestly, I think really there hasn't been a huge amount of news coming out of the club this week. There is some stuff that we'll obviously talk about in the second half when we come to preview the Wigan game. But one thing that did come out is obviously the Bristol Street Motors Trophy game has been postponed. Against Man City's under-21s, obviously. Now, I think this is just a bit of a farce, to be honest. I think the majority of people, like, they'd be lying if they said that they gave too much of a shit about the competition. It's
in the early stage, particularly this fixture. Even those people that like to go to most games, and even maybe go to a lot of the trophy games, the attendance for the under-21s fixture is always lower than the other one. So I think you're right in saying that that's a statistical fact, in that less people care about this match specifically than any other fixture that would play throughout the season. It's competitive. But, and you know what, I felt like that. When the news came out initially, my thought was, I don't really care, whatever. And then, actually, when I thought about it in a bit more depth, particularly as a Lincoln City fan, with my Lincoln City fans hat on and being quite, self-indulgent to an extent, I get a bit annoyed about it now, actually, to be honest.
I think it's not just even a Lincoln City fan hat. It's sort of a wider football thing. Like, you have your football fan hat on and you go, why is this game being moved? It's not like the under-21s for Man City have other things to be doing in that game. There's no, is it Premier League 2? I think is that where they're playing in the minute, or wherever it is that they're playing their sort of league football. They don't have another game on. And then it was pointed out that Man City have an EFL Cup game that evening. So they'd have to send teams out to 2 different places. It's like, well, yeah, but you've got a squad with...
They've got 1 million players.
Yeah, you've got all of the players. So it doesn't make sense. And it's another example, isn't it, of Premier League clubs kind of throwing their weight around a little bit and just having, I don't know, more of a say than most other clubs would even dare to get.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, good point. I suppose most will just kind of get on with it. I think the interesting thing will be, and I will genuinely look out for this as well on Tuesday, is how many of these kind of, it's not even really fringe players, it is like really is like reserve under 21, second, third, fourth string team players who generally feature in this competition. How many of them are going to be playing in the League Cup match? How many will make the squad? And if Man City do play players that have squad numbers from 50 to 90 in the League Cup, then you kind of say, okay, I don't like it because it's just bullying. But you can see, okay, from their point, you're looking after number one, just fair dues. If they just play first team players with maybe one or two youngsters in the squad, then it's a complete waste of time of everyone's time and effort. And it's really annoying for us because at this early part of the season, we like to use this competition as a really good way of getting minutes in the legs of our fringe players, keeping them up to speed, giving them an opportunity to impress as well. But also it means that if and when the opportunity arrives in the league, they're ready to go. It's a really important competition for our kind of fringe players. This is. I appreciate, it's not necessarily the first team players that are going to be affected by this hugely, but the likes of Lewis Monsma, for example, to get some valuable minutes and to get some time back on the pitch and to get back to full fitness and match sharpness, it's invaluable. And now we're going to have to wait another month or two for that to come round, just because Man City wanted to. And that's the element of it that annoyed me, because there's pros and cons from the wider football context, but actually individually, it was just that, well, their squad needs were put ahead of our squad needs, and that was a little bit annoying, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it is. It's just, I don't know. I mean, I think the one positive thing that I think came out of the discussion was actually Gaz's article about the Coca-Cola Cup game in '96. I
haven't read it. I'm so sorry. I'm not supporting the brand here at all, but I haven't read his article.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those games I don't think I'd need to read the article too much.
Oh, sorry. I thought there was something very specific in the article.
Oh, no.
Just the fact that we played them in 1996 and did very well. Yes, of course.
Because that is one of my fondest memories of supporting the Imps as a kid. It was it was nice to sort of relive that. Even though the whole reason that, one of the reasons that it got put out was the fact that the game's been postponed, and it's just incredibly annoying. But yeah, I'm just getting a bit fed up with a lot of the way that Premier League clubs and other bigger clubs are starting to throw their weight around a little bit and getting things, like a game that admittedly we're not that bothered about, but getting that game postponed, it's like, oh, it's like when you're a kid and you've got, you see two toddlers and one of them's got a toy and they're not playing with it, and then another kid goes to get it. No, that's mine. That's my toy. It's just like they can't have it, so nobody can have it, sort of thing. It's frustrating.
It's the bigger boys, isn't it? That's what they're up against. It's annoying. Andy's made a good point in the chat here. I've just seen in the comments. It says by the time it's rearranged, it could mean that we're out of the competition by the time that game match is played anyway. Now, of course, we all hope that's not the case. We hope we win the next match against Grimsby, but yeah, it could be. It could be. That could be a complete dead rubber then. But I imagine that's not at the forefront of anyone's mind in the football club. I imagine we're fully expecting to be competitive in the competition by the time that comes around. But it's a really good point. It's a really good point that Man City want their players playing in men's competitive football. And if it's a dead rubber by that point, then it's not a competitive match in the first place, is it? So that's a good point.
No, absolutely. So, we're rattling through. We're rattling through our topics at the minute. So I think what we'll probably do now, instead of going to a break now, we'll spend maybe 10 minutes or so before we come into the Wigan preview. Obviously, one bit of news that's come out of the club today, I think it's within the past sort of hour or so as we record, is the fact that George Wickens will not be available for selection on Saturday due to a concussion. So I've not caught the full interview. Is it just concussion protocol? Like it's a precautionary thing, or does was it confirmed that he had a concussion?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't caught the full interview. I saw the clip. I think the actual interview will be released tomorrow. The full presser. But what Michael confirmed is that it was very much just protocol, and because of that protocol, he's unable to play today. They're hoping he'll be absolutely fine. It'll just be this one match, and he'll be back in training on Monday. But obviously, that depends on how things go. But he seemed pretty confident that it was just going to be one match for George. But it's a big opportunity for Zach Geacock, who, of course, came on, didn't really put a foot wrong at all in the last few minutes of the game against Peterborough, albeit wasn't massively tested, but you can only save what's put in front of you. He distributed well, he came out well. So I imagine he'll be starting on Saturday. So that'll be a big opportunity for him, really. So that would be a real interesting one. Another interesting selection issue will be, of course, the potential return of Mr. Paudie O'Connor, who will be returning off the back of his suspension. So I seem to remember when he got sent off last season, Mr. Skubala did not put him straight back into the starting lineup for the following match. He had to kind of bide his time. Do you think he'll be back in the starting lineup tomorrow? Saturday?
I mean, there's two arguments to it, and there's one that is it sticks in my mind from a conversation that me and Gaz had many moons ago. And it's like, if your captain's fit, you play your captain. Usually, that's kind of it's as simple as that. However, the discussion that you guys had on Sunday, where you said, well, is it easier to drop a striker if they're not scoring goals, or having that conversation? You think, well, the guys at the back have done nothing wrong. They've played really well in Paudie's absence. It's a headache that I'm glad I don't have. It's a decision that I don't have to make. I would probably bring him in again, because he's the captain. I think it would be harsh on Hamer by the sounds of it. I know he's obviously. I have struggled to find all of the footage from the Peterborough game, so I haven't seen the incident that led to Peterborough getting possession before that goal, because I was unable to watch in full on Saturday. But yeah, from the sounds of it, like, some people have said that it was a complete howler. Some people said, it was a slip, and it was just a mistake. It would be harsh if Tom Hamer were dropped, and that be not the reason, but that be kind of a reason that people would attribute to it. But I do think that, that kind of traditionalist in me says, if your captain's fit, you play your captain.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Last time round, I think it was the Cambridge match that he missed out on, and I think it was TJ, Sean, and Jacko that were favoured at the back, or maybe Mitchell played. I can't remember who it was exactly now, but it was definitely not Paudie, despite him being fit, and he was on the bench. And I liked it at the time. As much as we all know how important Paudie O'Connor is, there was no reason to drop anyone else. And I liked that the lads there, that off the back of a win, were able to keep their place. But I think it's a little bit different this time round. I think Paudie has grown in stature since then, in his importance to the team. I think he's been an absolute man mountain this season so far, even more than he had last season, to be honest. I think he's grown again. And we all want competition for places. That's what every player needs. That's what every manager wants in his squad. You want to be pushed. And that drives performance. And Tom Hamer didn't put much of a foot wrong in his first start in the league, but he did make a mistake that indirectly led to a goal. And I just think, that's the level. That's the level these days.
Yeah.
It is. Is it harsh? Yeah, of course it's harsh. But also, you want to drive high performance, don't you? And for me, Jacko's not put a foot wrong playing in the right centre-back role all season. No. Paudie hasn't bar his red card. Sean obviously is a guaranteed starter at the left centre-back. I think it'll be a real battle between Hamer and Jacko over the course of the season in that right centre-back role. But for me, Paudie comes straight back in again, particularly not just for this, but for set pieces as well, because I think we did miss him off offensive set pieces on Saturday. We weren't as threatening against Peterborough from them as I think we hoped we would be. And also, Bristol Rovers scored 2 goals from set pieces on Saturday against Wigan. Not against Wigan, sorry. But Wigan scored 2 goals from set
Yes.
pieces against Bristol Rovers, even. So you want your captain who's got the top sort of 5 or 6 in the league for aerial duel percentage wins. You want him in your team. So for me, Paulie comes back in. Tom Hamer is really unfortunate to miss out. But again, we said this last season, you want this sort of decision. You want Michael Skubala to have these sort of difficult decisions to make because it means you've got a competitive squad. So that's that really.
I think, as Andy says, set pieces at the other end of the pitch when Paulie plays were more of a threat as well. And I'd fully agree with that. I think it's, it's harsh, but, like you say, that's the level. And I think that was a theme on Saturday as well. It's harsh, but a slip leads to a goal because that's the level we're playing at. And when you have a game like we did on Saturday, that's unfortunately, what can potentially happen.
And I think it's just pointing out, it wasn't obviously directly led to the goal. There was quite a bit of play after that, but we had control of the ball until Tom obviously slipped and misplaced his pass or was dispossessed. So indirectly, it did lead to Peterborough's goal, which was I think it was 0.03 XG for the goal. Yeah, it's a brilliant goal. Obviously, Poco had so much to do from there. It's a brilliant goal to part. Much of the blame to Tom Hamer is really harsh. But again, that's the level that we're at now. That we get punished at this level for making mistakes against good teams. But also, when you've got players in the team who have been so consistent, then that's the consistency that you have to reach to be a guaranteed starter. Don't get me wrong. We're going to get injuries. We're going to get suspensions. Tom Hamer's going to play plenty of football for us. And I can see him being our long-term solution in that role. But right now, this weekend, I think it should be Paulie back in there with Jacko and Sean either side of him.
Yeah, I'd agree. But the thing that I did want to touch on quickly, obviously you said it's good. It's a big opportunity for Zach Geacock. The question was asked, and I think I'm not sure if it was in the group or if I was having a chat with Gaz directly, but he said it would be interesting to see when the last times in the in the league that we've had second string keepers coming in for whatever reason. And I was going back to, I think about 2018, 2019. Goalkeepers have pretty much been ever present in the league with the exception of 2. Can you tell me, Chris, who those 2 are?
Oh, you put me on the spot. Cole Rushworth was one. I think Jordan Wright played a few games.
Yep.
And I want to say, how far back are we going? 2018. Since we've been in League One.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I will say it's not going far. It's not quite going that far back either.
Oh, Josh Griffiths?
Yeah. So there was Josh Griffiths in 2022 towards the end of the season, was out from about March when Jordan Wright came in and filled in. And then there were 2 games with Carl Rushworth where Jordan Wright came in there, lost one of them to Peterborough. That was the 4-0. And then we won the Cambridge game. And then, of course, with Alex Palmer at the end of the season going out injured, and we had to get Joe Bursick in.
He had a rather good game, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And I was looking back through some old articles, and there's one from Stoke-on-Trent Live. Lincoln fans fall in love with Stoke City's Joe Bursick. Yeah, I remember that was a bone of contention, I think it was, with some Sunderland fans as well.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yes. I think they won't be worrying too much about that these days, will they?
No, I think, the bigger picture, they've done all right, haven't they?
They've not done bad.
So yeah, that's kind of the topics that we kind of wanted to hit before we started talking about Wigan. So when we come back from a little ad break, which we will have very shortly, we're going to be talking about Wigan. And I chatted to Adam from the Progress with Unity podcast, and we had a bit of a chat about some stuff. So that will probably be the first thing that you hear when we come back from an ad break. For those of you that are watching live on YouTube, we'll say hello for a minute, I think.
Hello for a minute.
Hello for a minute, yeah. So yeah,
if anyone has any questions, please do pop them in the comments. We'll obviously we haven't got a huge amount to talk about today. Wigan won't take half an hour, so if you do have any questions, please feel free to type.
It is you talking, so we may do. We don't know. But yeah, Steve's on board.
Be concise this time. Well, I'll try.
Oh, no, the one time I need you to fill, Chris.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I can stop.
And of course, Andy's in as well, so good to see you. So, right, yeah, we'll come back in and I'll play the video, and then we will crack on from there. Performance as good as the results suggested. I mean, obviously, we've got 2 goals for Joe Hugel, and we've got Thilo Asgard getting one as well. It looked from afar that was about as dominant as you can get. Was that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. I think Bristol Rovers were poor on the day, poorer than I thought, because the starts of the season isn't that. They're still above Wigan, so the starts of the season hasn't been that bad. I was very disappointed with them. I think we basically just put in a very solid away performance and very clinical. I mean, the only kind of things you could compare it to, I guess, are sort of last season's performance, Wigan against Lincoln last season, where I thought we were exceptional. We played beautiful football in the game against a very good side. I think the other day we were just very clinical. I don't know if you've seen the goals, but 3 of them were very scrappy. But Hugel getting 2 scrappy goals, they are the goals that are the making of a striker that can score a lot of goals. Will Keane 2 seasons ago, when we won 3 seasons ago now, time passes quickly, when we won the league, a lot of his goals were from the box, instinctive goals, being in the right place at the right time. So I don't mind them. One of them was very scrappy. Not quite scrappy. I don't know if anyone's seen the Sheffield Wednesday QPR game. Not quite as scrappy as that goal. But yeah, and then Asgard's goal was from a goalkeeping error, though we worked the position very well. And then the 4th goal was obviously class, class goal. Great. Typical left footer do them very good at free kicks. I don't know why the left foot's very good at free kicks, but it is. And he struck it well. I mean, you can tell he's come from a good stock at Liverpool. And Bristol Rovers didn't really offer anything. I think our midfield was much improved. Jensen Weir coming in alongside Matt Smith, who's been consistently one of our best players over the last couple of seasons. I think Jensen Weir fitted in very nicely there. We're getting a sort of a regularised centre-back pairing. And also young Carragher finally coming through. He's had a few loan spells, but I think he's played 3 league games in a row now, and he's looking pretty good. I don't know if he'll reach the heights of his dad, but hopefully he won't be spitting on.
Well, look,
you might need to call that out.
So there we go. That was Adam from the Progress with Unity podcast. He was talking about the game at the weekend against Bristol Rovers, where it seemed like it was fairly dominant. Took them apart 4-0. And yeah, go check out the full preview. It will be live shortly after we finish the podcast here, so within about half an hour or so. But yeah, good chat with him. I think that the thing that I took from it in general is that I think we could be in for a similar game to the one that we saw on Saturday at the Bank, with 2 teams that kind of want to play football in the right way, I guess. They've made some decent signings. There are a few loans that have come in, like you mentioned there. I think Jensen Weir, who's obviously come in on a permanent transfer from Brighton, but they've got Joe Hugel, who did really well at Burton last season in the time that he was there. And he seems like he might be finding his scoring boots at the minute, so possibly one to worry about. But I'll hand over to you, Chris. What have you got for us?
Well, quite a lot, actually, I come to think of it, because, of course, Adam is a Wigan supporter. He knows better than I do in terms of the intricacies of Wigan's season so far. But I did watch the goals from this week. I've watched the EFL highlights every week, and I've looked at the numbers as well. And I think Sean Maloney was under quite a lot of pressure before the Bristol Rovers game. Wigan have been really underperforming. Only one win against Crawley, a 1-0 win against Crawley, and as much as I still don't think Crawley are as bad as people maybe expect them to be. It's a win that if you're Wigan Athletic and you expect to be in the playoffs or towards the end of the towards kind of playoff contention towards the end of the season, it's a match that you expect to win, and to only win 1-0 in a game where they only created 0.43 expected goals. It doesn't mean that they only deserve to score 0.4 goals, but it means the quality of their chances was quite low, or they hadn't created many of them. So in terms of chance creation, it's been pretty poor, to be honest. If we take out the game against Bristol Rovers, their expected goals is the second worst in the league.
Okay.
So they've really struggled to create high quality chances, and obviously the 4-0 result really took quite a few people by surprise, myself included. And Bristol Rovers firstly didn't show up; they were rubbish. Mm-hmm. They were very suspect from set pieces. So Wigan's first 2 goals were both off corners. So it was a corner delivered towards the back post, a bit of a scramble, and then tapped in by Joe Hugill twice. So yes, he scored 2 goals. But there were two tap-ins, and to be honest, and yes, you've got to be in the right place to score them. But it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was a hugely well worked. Either of them were hugely well worked set pieces. They were pretty poorly defended. It shows they have a threat, but also because it wasn't a direct shot from a header, it went onto the ground, and Hugill knocked the ball in with his foot from about a yard out twice. The XG of those 2 shots is obviously really, really, really high. So, but I think that maybe masks actually a struggle to create chances from open play. Their third goal was actually a decent press. They won the ball back relatively high up the pitch, but they're not particularly aggressive presses. They're 21st for PPDA, so actually not the most aggressive presses, but they did win it back high up the pitch. But it was a shot that the goalkeeper saved and spilled, and then was tapped in again from about 3 yards out. So that was 3-0 with 3 goals that were effectively tap-ins, and Wigan didn't really have to create a huge amount in open play to generate those chances. And that maybe tarnishes, I think, a few question marks at the moment under Wigan Athletic. And so I don't want this to kind of come across as me just saying we're going to be brilliant, we're going to batter them. But I don't think they're as good as the 4-0 win last weekend suggests in terms of the underlying performance metrics. However, of course, we're not robots, we're human beings. Footballers are human beings, aren't they? So that would have done so much for confidence. That would have really lifted the pressure in Wigan Athletics ranks as well. So in terms of, are they good? I think they're okay. I think they've got really good individuals. I still think they're searching for their rhythm. I'm not too concerned about us conceding a huge amount of chances, and particularly with Paulie O'Connor back in, I think we're going to be fine at defending set pieces against them. After watching the goals back, it just seemed that Bristol Rovers were quite poor defensively in that regard. So the big question is kind of what happens going forward. In terms of other metrics, they're pretty much mid-table for everything else, which is why I didn't have a lot to say initially, because there's no real outliers other than their expected goals and so shots created, shots on target, and overall quality of chances is quite low. Taking those 4 tap-ins out or 3 tap-ins out from their 4-0 win against Bristol Rovers. So I've been talking quite a while there, so I'll be quiet for a little bit to get your opinion, but that's my little bit so far.
I mean, the thing is, I've only really seen highlights of Wigan's game so far, and then obviously the chat with Adam. And I think the thing that I took from what Adam was saying is that a lot of their play doesn't really have much in terms of maybe not tactical flexibility, because obviously they will have, but it seems to be fairly rigid in terms of the way that they're playing. The way that he was talking about it almost reminded me of Appleton's Lincoln for a while, where they stick to, no, we are playing this out from the back, and we are going to be working our way through the thirds. We're not going to be bypassing the midfield at any point. We will be a passing football team. And I think, particularly if, assuming Ben Howe starts on Saturday, I think that could play into our hands a little bit, because we know that he likes to really put the pressure on from the top and have the high press that we're getting known for. So I think it could be an interesting one from that perspective. Whether we didn't really talk about the speed and the width that they've got as well. I know that they do like to push down to push down the flanks if they can, and I wonder if that's going to be another good battle for Sean Rowan. I know he had from all accounts, he had a really good time on Saturday, but I think it's Rankin that plays out on the right for Wigan.
Yeah, and
so that
he
could
is
be a good one.
rapid. He's really threatening. He was brilliant at Exeter. Doesn't seem to have a huge amount in terms of final product, but he's really threatening. Very much the Cohen Bramall mold he's been playing on the right of a midfield so far this season rather than as a wing back as he was at Exeter. But yeah, that'll be a tough test for Sean. But I think he kept Poku quiet for the majority of the game. Poku only had 3 shots in the match, and all 3 of them were outside the box. Obviously, he has the quality to do what he did with one of them.
Yeah.
But if you're going to allow shots, you want to allow shots from outside the area, not inside it. And so I think Sean was outstanding against Poku last weekend. And he'll have a similar test against Rankin, but who more likely want to go on the outside, I think. Be interested to see how we line up out of possession, I think, tactically, because in all but one game so far this season, we're going to have played a back 4 and only one up top. So a variation of a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1. The one game they played a back 3 and a front 2, they lost 2-0 away at Reading. That's the game that they created the least number of chances and conceded the highest number of chances. So I imagine Mr. Maloney will not go back to that to face us. I fully expect them to be a version of either a 4-5-1 or a 4-2-3-1. What that means is they can have an overload out wide. And it also pretty similar discussion as to what we said when previewing Peterborough. Sean Rowan is an excellent 1v1 defender. If we play out of possession in our regular 3-5-2 shape, you're asking whoever's going to play at wing back, which of course is who knows, because he's going to play at wing back for us. But you're asking them to kind of do the defensive job against Rankin, who's really threatening. If we play in a 4-4-2 out of possession shape, then we're allowing Sean to do that one-to-one job again. So I actually expect us to see us play out of possession probably in that back 4 shape again, which is really interesting. Again, we've got that flexibility. So when you said at the start of this section, you expect maybe to see a similar game as we did on Saturday against Peterborough, I think that's a pretty good comparison, to be honest. And it's interesting because Gaz and I mentioned on the podcast that the Peterborough game felt a little bit like the Wigan away game last season.
Yeah.
So maybe there's some similarities here. So Wigan, similar to Peterborough, actually, have played the 5th fewest number of long passes over the whole season so far. And what might surprise people actually is that we've only made the 7th most long passes. So from the criticism earlier in the season about playing it long too often, we actually only play it long.
Is that league stats only, or does that include?
That is league stats only. Yes, league stats only. So we'll ignore the Harrogate game there.
Okay, yeah.
But I think that's interesting. I think there are 2 teams that maybe do have a similar idea of how to play. I think we probably press a little bit higher. Our possession stats are actually the lowest in the league at the moment. I think some of that is game state, and when you play against Peterborough, who will dominate as much as they do, that will always bring your overall down. And because we haven't had that many games so far this season, there's quite a big swing every match in that. I think that will settle down to be kind of the mid-40s. But Wigan, interestingly, playing not many long passes. Their long pass percentage is quite low as well. But they actually are 21st for possession in the league as well. So in their games so far this season, they haven't had the lion's share of the ball. But they have also played against Barnsley. They have played against Charlton. They have played against Birmingham as well. So that's 3 teams who, well, certainly Charlton and Birmingham will be possession-based team. Crawley had, I think, 80% possession in the match against Wigan, despite Wigan winning that 1-0. But they are quite excessive in that regard. So again, I don't think there's too much to read into those numbers yet, because the season's still really, really kind of in its infancy.
Yeah.
I think the big part of it will be tactically, where do we shape up? And I think we absolutely will play 3-5-2 in possession, as we kind of always do, with really high wing backs. But I think we'll be kind of 4-4-2 out of possession to kind of stifle their wide players, which is where their threats come from. But I do think that Wigan maybe aren't quite finished yet. I think they need a bit of work. They're not quite in tune, and they've got some really good individuals. Like Asgard, I think, is one that will get some headlines. He's a really, really high quality technical player, can play wide or central. He'll be one that we need to be careful of. But there's nobody else that really jumps out to me as, oh my God, he is really super threatening. We need to watch out for him. I think they do have some really good individual players, but so do we. So I think it'll be a tight game. It's actually a game I think that we can get something positive out of here. I'm slightly more confident over 3 points here than maybe I would have been a couple of maybe pre-season predicting this.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think that the feeling that I've got from what I've seen and what I've spoken to so far, it feels to me like they are maybe another window away from being where they need to be in terms of personnel. I think bigger picture stuff. Obviously, last season they had the points deduction. I think they were getting over the basket case tag. We had the two big basket case clubs in the division last season, obviously Reading and Wigan. I think Wigan have gotten out of there. I don't think Reading quite are just yet. Obviously, their takeover has been postponed again this week, but we'll talk about that later in the season. But yeah, I think Wigan are stable now rather than being a bit all over the shop, and I think that's allowed the on-pitch stuff to breathe a little bit more. But I think, give them another window and they'll be closer to where I think they need to be. And I think there's a few players there. I think the fact that they are not quite reliant on loans, I think that's probably harsh to say, but they do have a few loans in their first 11. I think it almost feels a bit like where we were a couple of seasons ago, which is very strange to say, given the fact that Wigan are Wigan and we're not. We're little old Lincoln.
We are indeed. But yeah, your comparison to Michael Appleton's Lincoln, I think, is quite a good one, to be honest. Maybe not necessarily in exact style, although I think there are some similarities there. But in terms of like squad makeup and in terms of their development, they've made a few permanent signings this window, and I think Wigan have been a former Premier League club. I think when they get going, they're going to be a more, I suppose, attractive proposition than little old Lincoln would be. But right now, I think we're quite comparable, maybe. But their catchment area is pretty good for loans, of course, and they've got Joe Hugill from Manchester United, Calvin Ramsey from Liverpool as two players on loan that are pretty much fixtures in their first team at the moment. Mm-hmm. So yeah, particularly their front line there, that they seem to be a little bit reliant on. I think Jez called it A-star loans, didn't they? So you get your kind of squad in, but then you add to that squad with the loans that maybe you can't quite afford permanently. And then but that was us when we first came into the league, and then we built from there. And now we're at the point where when we own our assets, and I imagine that's where Wigan will want to get to. They of course have had a big sale this summer, and I forgot his name, Charlie Hughes. I think the centre back went, and they've still got Sam Tickle in goal. And it's always very funny to say they've got Mr. Tickle in goal. But he's a superb goalkeeper. He really is, and so he'll be tough to beat. So they've got assets. I think they've got all the ingredients of really kicking on. In terms of their long-term prospects, I do expect them to end up back in the Championship in the not too distant future. Honestly, I don't think they're quite there yet in terms of playoffs this season, and I think we are marginally closer than they are. So for that reason and that reason alone, I just think we're really good. We're really well coached, and this isn't to say that Sean Maloney isn't a good coach, but he is. He's obviously still learning on the job a little bit. Not that long out of his playing career, and I just don't think they're quite polished yet. Like I think we're getting towards that. So I see this being a real tight game. I see us having more of the ball than we did against Peterborough, because I think we want to put our stamp on the game, particularly at home. But I do see the style of game being quite similar. But I'm going to predict a Lincoln City victory. I don't know what the score yet is. I'm not sure. Okay. I'm not sure if I'm confident enough to go over a score line. I'm going to predict a victory to 0. Is that allowed?
Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, so yeah, so I had in the preview we did wrap it up with a prediction, and neither of us predicted clean sheets. So I think Adam said that he was going to go 1-1 because he'd get crucified on his own podcast if he predicted a loss, and I said 2-1. So I'm going to go with that. But Sorry, Andy Brown has just reminded us about Sam's sister, Tess. Yeah, but when you were talking about him, in my head, I'm just going, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. So of course, he's a good goalkeeper. He's got really long arms.
That's why it's funny. That's why
Yes.
Mr. Tickle is the best Mr. Man to play in
Yes.
goal. I wonder how annoyed he is at every single podcast that previews this game.
Oh, he
against
must
Wigan
be.
for making exactly the same point,
Yeah,
exactly
he
the
must
same
be.
joke, if you can
It's,
even call
no.
it a joke.
Fun times. But look, let's talk briefly, because obviously we do know that there is going to be at least one enforced change at the weekend. We've spoken about potentially the other one back in defence with Paulie O'Connor coming in. But Steve asks in the chat, he says, do we think that Bailey will start on Saturday? And again, it ties back to the conversation. It ties back to the conversation you're having with Gaz. But I think it's worth revisiting, given that it's now Thursday evening and the game is 36 hours away, I think, at this point.
Yes, of course, lunchtime kickoff, isn't it? Don't forget that, everybody, by the way. 12:30 kickoff. Do you want to go first in terms of your opinion? Because I'm still formulating mine.
Yeah, you see, I think it'll be a half-time substitution.
Oh, that's very specific.
I think he'll come on at half-time, unless Jovan's got a hat-trick, at which point, we won't really care about the rest of the game anyway.
Very true. But
I think if there's a switch to be made, I think he'll potentially come on at half-time. I do understand the interest, and it was quite nice to hear actually about the interest that Wednesday are taking in him. And the level of commitment that they've got to keeping tabs on the player at the weekend. But I think, and it goes back to the discussion. Jovan's done nothing wrong. He's been brilliant. The only thing that he's not done is got the same amount of goals that Ben House has got, but he's doing everything else right, in my opinion. So I think dropping him when we are scoring goals. It's not like we've got a complete drought across the entire side. We've got, what is it, 10, 11 at the moment in the league? Where is the table? The table is there. We have scored 10. So, it's not like we're wanting for goals after 5 games having 10 goals behind us. I think Jovan's role at the moment is very important, and I think he's carrying it out very well. So I think it would be incredibly harsh to drop him. However, I do want to see more of Bailey Cadamartri.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm really becoming a Jovan McCarthy fan. Last season, I hoped he would impress. I thought I saw glimpses of potential there and what he could turn into, but it was, you just wished him well. Whereas now, I just really like what he brings to the team as a first team player, as a really difficult player to defend against. I'm just wondering which of the two are more threatening off the bench, and it's and that's the thing, because honestly, my gut instinct is I think Bailey will start. I saw a lot from him for the first time. We haven't seen much of him before, of course, but saw lots of little glimpses of what his threat really is. There are similarities to Joe Taylor, not necessarily in stature, but maybe a little bit in style. I can see why that's, we don't have another centre forward that has that profile. Jovan is not that profile of player. So, and he's come here to play. Let's not forget that. He's absolutely come here to play. But we don't just drop our player for a lone player because the player wants to play games, because our player wants to play games as well. It's who suits us better. And it's not an 11v11 match anymore. The subs are very much part of the overall picture of each match day. Honestly, I think I would start Jovan, and then it would be an early substitution, maybe not half time, maybe sort of 55, 60 minutes or so. If we needed a change, then Bailey would come on. That's what I think I would do. What do I think will happen? I think Bailey will start this one.
Okay.
I've just got a feeling.
Fair enough. Not a text. You've not had a text.
No, I'm not quite that close with him, sadly. Left wing back, Ben. Dom Jeffries, I think, was a surprise starter there so certainly for Gary, was a surprise starter there on Saturday. Did really well, got an assist. Eric Ring came on and showed, again, a bit like Bailey did, some real quality and showed some flashes of what he could bring to the team. And I certainly expect to see Eric Ring becoming a fixture in that left wing back role eventually. Do you think Do you think he will make a start, or can you see it being similar again?
I think Ring will start on Saturday. Yeah, I think Eric Ring will start. I think he's kind of the headline signing, and I think to have him in the squad on his first home league game, I think you don't just put him on the bench for that. I think it would be a nice moment, and I'm purely thinking just from his point of view. But I think when he came on, by all accounts, Saturday he came on and played very well. In the trophy game, was it the trophy? Was it the trophy game or the cup game?
He played on the right in the trophy game.
Yeah,
he looked good for 60 minutes, even though we lost.
I thought he looked really good then as well. So I think, you give him the opportunity to have his home league debut in front of what's going to be a massive crowd, and I think he'll come in and he'll start on Saturday. And you're going to tell me I'm wrong?
No, I'm not saying you're wrong. We don't. Neither of us know, do we? Because I get the sentiment, and again, I think we'll see him playing there regularly. I just think he will come on. I think so. We're actually disagreeing on both of these. That's rare, isn't it? So I'm going to think. I think Dom Jeffries will start at left wing back, and
no, we agreed on Jovan starting.
No, I think Bailey will start. So I personally would start.
Oh,
Jovan,
so yeah. So,
but I think the question is, what do I think will be the case? And what do we think Michael will do? I think he will start Bailey, and I think he will start Dom Jeffries, and I think he will start Paulie O'Connor in place of Tom Hamer. I can see everyone else being as you were. But we'll see. Yeah,
I think we will see Eric Ring and Paulie O'Connor being the other two changes, obviously, apart aside from Zach coming in for George Wickens. So that's the I keep saying Wickham, the Wigan game. Wigan. It's Wigan words. They're important. The Wigan game previewed and looking ahead to it. I don't really think there's too much else that we need to talk about, but I did just want to bring up, because I was sat there wondering on Monday. I was like, I wonder what the reaction to all of this is, because it's very rare that I'm on the tweets these days. Did you catch any of the Birmingham Wrexham debacle that was on Sky Sports?
Retrospectively, I think Monday night is the day that football died.
You see,
I hated the coverage of it. I hated it so much. It was nothing to do with the football. There was pictures. It was just every 2 minutes. It was just panning to David Beckham and all the famous people in the crowd. Fuck off! I don't care. I'm here to watch the football, please. Well,
wow.
I watch League One football for a reason, not Premier League. Oh, it was so frustrating.
There was a moment in the coverage where they said, yes, of course, we do have to point out that we don't have VAR in this game. I was like, Jesus Christ. Like, we don't, because
thank God,
because it's League One football. No, it was really frustrating, because I wanted to watch it to see what a non Sky Sports Plus League One presentation would be, and B, just morbid curiosity, because full disclosure, I've watched the Wrexham documentary. I find it really good.
Yeah, same. And that's why I felt a bit of a hypocrite, by the way, because the documentary is really well put together. What they've done for the town or city is great. Football club's obviously gone from strength to strength. I don't like that they funded it via debt, by the way, via loans and not shares. I think that's worth pointing out. That never seems to get in the headlines at all. But yeah, the documentary is good though. But I find myself just wishing them ill now.
I think it's because they're in League One. It's because they're in the same division as us. Like, when you're looking at it from the National League and then League Two, it's like, oh yeah, they've done really well in the National. Oh yeah, they've won the league. They've won League Two. They're doing really well.
As they should with the budgets they've had, of course. But they still did. It's sort of a nice story, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, and then you get to now, and it's like, oh, it's the big boys with all the money, isn't it? Yeah, okay. And then it was just. I mean, Andy's mentioned it in the chat. It was just embarrassing. Like, before the game, they had Ollie Palmer and Paul Mullin talking about they were doing the head-to-head of, like, I'm going to say a number of how many things I can remember, then you have to beat that number, and then you keep going. So like the topic was film stars. So it's like, oh, how many film stars can you name? And he's like, oh, 5. Go on then, do 5. He's like, he couldn't even name 5 movie stars. I'm like, you work with 2. And he didn't even get them. It's frustrating to watch, and I think obviously, you know, the new TV deal is a net positive, I think, but
of course,
the
we'll
the
take
level-
the negative associated with
yeah,
this, which
you've
you
gotta
imagine
put
had
up with it.
had a role to play in getting the deal in the first place. Not much of a role, but you have to imagine that American audience, from the Wrexham story and the
100%.
Birmingham story, it absolutely had to have had an impact. So we'll take the money, thank you, and we'll conduct ourselves in a way that we like, rather than the whole fanfare. I just there's a reason that you like that you're a lower league football fan, isn't there? There's a reason that you're attracted to kind of, as we call, proper football, rather than kind of what the Premier League has become. And it was almost like that was, and you know, Harvey, for example, also from the same country, but it was that element of it that attracted him here in the first place. It was the rawness, it was the romance, if you will, of proper football. But yeah, Wrexham and Birmingham have not done that. They've just it's because they're based in the English leagues, and they both of them eventually want to chase the Premier League riches. And I hate it. I hate it so much. Sorry to be so negative, everybody, about this.
No,
we've got a relatively positive podcast on the whole, I think, particularly about Saturday. But I really dislike this, and I don't dislike it even on the pitch. On the pitch, I enjoy that just as much as normal. It's just the sideshow off the pitch of both those football clubs, but particularly at Wrexham. It's just
it felt like forced spectacle. Like you know, it's not a glamour tie. It's Birmingham. I lived in Birmingham for 3 years. It's not that glamorous. And, you know, it was, you know, when you go and, you know, when you go out with a group and you have the person that they've organized everything and you have to do everything in the order that they've done it in. It's the organized fun. It felt like that. But in football coverage, it's like, hey, this is fun. Look at this. We got the players that you probably don't know because they're playing in League One, but you would know them if they were in the documentary. This is fun. And I'm sat there going, no, just show me the football. I
completely agree with you. But you know what? Saturday is not like that. It's proper football. Lincoln City versus Wigan Athletic. That is proper football. There's no glitz and glamour associated with that fixture. This is proper football. What we all love, isn't it? Oh,
absolutely.
Can't wait. Lunchtime kickoff. Can't forget that's the only thing that will feel a little bit different to a traditional match day for us. But apart from that, proper League One football.
Yeah, 12:30 kickoff. The Common is closed if you normally park on the Common as well. Don't forget that one. But yeah, we will be back on Sunday, hopefully looking back on 3 points. We'll be looking ahead to all of the stuff that's going to be going on next week, including something that we're quite excited about that we can't talk about just yet. But yeah, we will we'll reveal more about that soon. But until that point, we'll see you next week. And up the Imps.
Up the Imps.